Oh, we just had a minute.
Can we just like narrow the?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
Like 3 years, right? I guess you come into your office and they're asking for a ticket for $15,000.
Sorry.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of council for January 24th, and we're starting at 7:01 p.m. And that brings us to item 2, the confirmation of agenda. Councillor Sobel, do you have anything?
I have nothing, Your Worship.
Councillor Bauer?
I have nothing, Your Worship.
Councillor Montgomery?
I have nothing new, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cox?
I have nothing, Your Worship.
Councillor Peterson?
I have nothing, Your Worship.
And Councillor Corbeil?
I have nothing, Your Worship.
And I have nothing to add to the agenda. Administration?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a number of items. First is 3.1 Strathmore Youth Club. 4.1 Delegation, Mr. Matt Bima. I'm sorry, I hope I said that right. Strathmore Disc Golf. We have a response to administration inquiries under section 13.1. And we also have 2 in-camera items, one 14.3, FOIP section 16, business interest of a third party, and item 14.4, FOIP section 24, public body confidences.
Thank you. There's nothing else? Then I'll be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Corbeil?
I move to adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Which brings us to item 3, presentations, and 3.1, the Strathmore Youth Club. And Shannon Zeman is here, I think. Oh, and sorry, our new chair, and I feel responsible because I kind of pushed this on her to join, but Denise Jeremiah is here as well.
She likes president too, not chair.
Oh, sorry, President or Empress or.
Empress. So we just wanted to come tonight to do a quick presentation to Mayor Fuel for the years of service that he's had with the club. He started with us in 2010, so just a year after we kind of got going, and has been a huge support of the club since then and put in a lot of time and effort, and just wanted to know how much we appreciate that. So we have a little presentation for you if you would.
Thank you. And would council mind coming up with me?
No,
Just go, it's not for us.
Wow.
You can handle it.
Yeah, sure. So on the plaque, the artwork was actually done by Abby Cox, so a local youth. And the quotes that are on here were picked out from youth involved in the club, but also have been students of yours as well.
Oh, nice.
So they
Very
put that
nice.
together.
So,
So
Come on this side, Jen. Shannon.
I'm hiding.
Jason, stop.
I'm unbombing the photo.
your head's in there.
No, I'm out of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Speaking of Canada.
thank you.
it's not like you.
Okay, I expect the same thing.
Yeah.
Did you get the photo bomb, Jace?
No, I was hiding behind you.
Oh.
You loved it there.
Thank you to Shannon and Denise for that presentation and award. I really appreciate it. And it's nice to see how far the youth club has come as far as programs and events that you put on for the many youth in Strathmore. And good luck with your fundraising and the trip to Peru. So thank you very much. And all your time volunteering and working too, so thank you. Which brings us to item 4, delegations, and we have the Strathmore Disc Club, and Matt Byma, if you would like to come forward.
Thank you.
Oh,
You might be much closer.
maybe I'm too close. Maybe it's my lisp. Matthew.
Thank you guys for taking the time to hear me out and hear what has been going on with the Disc Golf Club. Did each of you get the email, receive the email? Would you mind if I also hand out? Okay, I also have some stats and stuff like that, if that would be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Wow.
So I'd like to discuss a couple things, but most importantly, the idea of installing a pitch and putt type of disc golf course into Kinsman Park. A pitch and putt being a smaller version of an actual course. As in the email there, I kind of stated, most holes would be between like 100 to 200 feet versus a regular course more on the side of 200 to 700 feet. I think the benefit of this would create just families playing together a lot more, would help grow the youth side of things, the junior side of things, and yeah, overall just really expand our, I don't know, just our growth in the club and stuff to the younger side. If you did read through the email I sent, the things we have done this year, including the memberships, the league, the juniors, all these things are very, I guess they've led the way in a lot of respects, even in Alberta. Our junior club and our junior league consists of 14 players, and then there's probably about another 10 juniors that consistently come out that couldn't make it onto the Tuesday night league. That 24 players is more than anybody, or more than all of the rest of Alberta combined. So I feel like as a club we're really reaching out, really to the juniors and stuff like that, and I think this would benefit them mostly. In the packet that I gave you on the back are PDGA statistics. The PDGA is stands for Professional Disc Golf League. Association, sorry. It is the basically the professional version of the PGA and everything else. The numbers there indicate about a 1% of actual players. When you become a PDGA member, usually the people that do that are the people that are playing in tournaments, the professionals, the consistent people that are going to all of these events. It doesn't indicate the recreational player, the young player that can't afford it, even just the older player that can't afford it. So those numbers, I would say indicate about a 1% of what the actual usage numbers are. Disc golf has been on the rise for the past 10 years, and in the last 5 years has doubled in size. So I think by doing this and moving forward with this, we're on the upswing of a sport that is actually growing and developing very fastly in Canada and in the world. So I guess I don't really have a lot as far as design or anything like that. I would like to work with that with powers that be. We've worked very well with the parks so far, even just moving holes and shaping holes and making them different for problem areas and stuff like that. So I think this is more just to ask us to look at this and consider it. And I realize there's lots of talk probably that will come from this afterwards, but I just wanted to present it and get feedback and questions and thoughts from you guys. Is there any?
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, you have to kind of help
Yeah,
me a little
yeah,
bit.
absolutely, yeah.
So when you say you want to go in the park, how much of that, like, and I read your thing, so
Yeah.
you're talking about the east side, correct?
Talking about the east side, yes.
So-
Basically, kind of the undeveloped area of the park is a very good part that we could use. But I also think in behind the baseball backstop and stuff.
Oh, that far back.
And that far back and around.
So would you
Ki-
go from the new pavilion all the way to behind the?
We probably wouldn't need all of it. The other area that is available is across the road in that strip along that has the creek that runs through it, that runs beside Ranch Estates there. That's another area. Those kind of areas that really aren't super usable but could become park space. And obviously we're looking for areas that are owned by the town and stuff as well, so. As far as amount of space, it really depends on how we lay it out and design and stuff, but we can try and make it as small or big as we would like, I guess. So.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel?
Thanks, I'm just rereading this. Thanks, Matt, for that. So, just before I get into the details here, I just want to say that I like to walk, especially in the summertime when there's no ice. And I walk in the vicinity of a lot of the holes for disc golf. And I don't have to tell you, I'm sure you're well aware of the amount of people that are observed on these playing this game. I think it's absolutely amazing and wonderful, and I'm totally 100% supportive. It just looks like a fun thing. It's a family thing right now. And I think it's a great thing for our town. So a couple things. As you know, the present disc course was basically paid for and created by fundraising.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some support from the town, most of it moral support and of course location and subsequent to that. I mean, I think the town did a lot for that, but the group that did that was very, very focused on fundraising and did an absolutely amazing job. Is that something similar that you're looking at?
I would look towards the town to help with money. I do believe that there is some availability to raise money. Like my idea of doing the matriarch sort of farmers or farming families, perhaps you could go to them and say, would you be willing to sponsor a hole and generate some income that way?
When you say we, you,
The
does that
club-
mean we?
The club.
Oh,
The
okay.
club could.
Yeah, just,
Yeah. But yeah, I would estimate that the cost for it typically runs between, it varies depending on how much dirt work and obviously anything like that, or trees you want to put in, that kind of stuff. But typically runs between 800 and 1,500 a hole. So, just as a,
okay. And if I could just ask my last question, Your Worship. In a message we received today on email, and I think this is one of the messages you were talking about, it speaks of a totally different location. It speaks of an Orchard Park location, which in this, in the opinion of Mr. Dirks, who wrote the email, is the ideal location for this park.
Orchard Park. I believe what he was discussing was actually a championship level course.
So we're
A full, like,
Oh.
large course.
So we're talking
Yes.
two different courses here.
That is a different thing, yes. We have, as a club, gone to a bunch of different private people and private landowners and businesses and stuff, trying to secure some land for a championship level course, because in having something like that as well brings people and business through tournaments and things that we can hold in this town as well. Canadian Nationals are held every single year, and Calgary has a brand new championship level course going in the Northwest. And really, to hold nationals, they need another one within an hour, which we would fall in that vicinity. And yeah, but that's not what I was discussing in this particular one, but
Fine.
just to, so you know that we are looking for that. So if you have any ideas, I'm all ears.
Sure. So, and the only thing, last thing I would say is the, when it comes down to cost and dollars, that's something certainly that this council will be faced with. But I think we're quite a ways from there. I think we have to figure out a location and whether or not your suggestion of Kinsman is appropriate. There's other things happening in Kinsman that there are plans for, so
Okay.
I think a lot of this has to go to administration before it comes back to us. But
Yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
for the idea and the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. So how many holes do you anticipate putting in if it was Kinsman Park?
We could do 9 or we could do 18. Those
Okay.
are typically what you would put in. Yeah.
Okay. I really like the idea. I'm a big fan and supporter of kind of the disc golf that's been going on so far. Yeah, if we can kind of figure out like a reasonable idea, I'm all behind it. So.
Yeah. It's a great multi-use sport, right? To put into parks and campgrounds or wherever, kind of, just because it doesn't have to be used all the time. It can give way to events and everything else, right? Even what we've seen throughout the parks of Strathmore that have it, people that are using the areas and the parks and stuff always have right of way. And we've really haven't had too many incidents as far as like any kind of pedestrian, anything like that. But we have tried and fixed any holes that have issues with housing and stuff like that, I guess. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the report. It's really good. I know tons of people that use the disc golf now or whatever, and probably just mostly recreation, but they still use it a lot. You're requesting like almost like a little par 3, right? Like a pitch, like is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, if you were to equate
Associate
it to
it
ball
with golf?
yes, it would be like a small, like a par 3 course,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it basically is just a smaller version. It's really nice for kids and families. I know I bring my kids out on the course and stuff like that, but on a lot of the holes, it's like I'll throw and then they'll throw and pick up their disc and come up to where I'm throwing and then they'll throw again and that kind of stuff, and that's fine. But I think this would really, just encompass like a course for kids and families to use together.
Would you, like going back to golf again, you know how there's like different tee boxes. Could you even associate a different tee box with the existing course that we have?
It's possible. I think one of the bigger challenges with our course for kids is actually the amount of walking it entails. It's like a 3.5 kilometer course. So I think that's one of the bigger challenges, whereas this would put everything in one smaller location.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Peterson?
Thanks for the report. I just am really supportive of the project and echoing Councillor Sobel, looking for that ideal spot. And one of the things that that I think this links so well to HEAL group that exists in Strathmore right now, that looking for active living for the Strathmore Prevents Cancer group. It fits with the objectives of that they have and as they connect to the town. And also the town has been engaged in looking at all of the recreation facilities throughout the community, and they've been engaged in that partnership with other people, like the school division who owns those, and looking for those ideal spots. And in terms of funding this, one of the things that I found was when I was reading your report earlier and looking at it was a youth engagement grant that really fits and really connects well to this, and it's through the Canadian Youth Services Corps, and what they ask is that you connect to another group. So whether it's another service group or whether it's a municipality or whoever it is, and then you work together, and it's for youth to do work in civic responsibility. But it has huge potential, and it sort of follows from the Strathmore group, the SAY group that initially built this course. One of the things that I'm wondering if it would be useful would be for our administration and our recreation department to work with you and bring back a report about what the possibilities are, and also to work within the existing grant writing structures that we have to see if we can't really put some money behind this and make sure that it moves forward, because it really is a great program, and the work that you've done and contributed to the community is really commendable, and that it's because of you that it's caught on, and I'm extremely appreciative of it, because even Siksika, the youth in Siksika have been the recipients of this goodwill, and it's just popular wherever it goes. So with the permission of Mayor, I would be prepared to make a motion to ask administration to work with Recreation and with Strathmore Disc Golf to bring back a report to council. I don't know if you're on a really strict timeline.
No. I mean, that's why I want to discuss this in the winter. Obviously, nothing can really happen till spring, summer, fall anyways, even if that were to happen this year. But yeah, we're not on any kind of like timeline or anything like that. But I thought I'd start in the winter, because that's when it's best to plan for this type of stuff.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson, would you mind if we heard from Councillor Bauer just before?
No, of course not. No.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to commend you, Matt, for putting together this report, and also for being a man of vision. It's so nice to see somebody who has some skin in the game and who's really seen something from its inception to its fruition, and now to more than doubling the number. Well, you've done even better than that with allowing the number of participants on your course. And I live behind the course. I have seen the number of people that come walking down those paths, and I must say it's one of the most respectful use of multi-use activity in our community. And I'm so proud to say that I've seen people from little kids to older generations. It's a multi-generational type of sport that actively involves everyone. So also, it's part of our council's, or becoming a part of our visioning process at the end of this month, to go and do some strategic planning. And I think that recreational use is something that we'll definitely be looking at. And I'm also wondering, have you spoken to your members about whether or not they're willing to increase their membership to subsidize something like a pitcher putt?
I haven't spoken to them about that. I could talk to them about that. We try and offer most of our things to our members and the public at the lowest cost possible, just to kind of cover our costs. In trying not to exclude anybody from a financial aspect. I know $40 isn't a whole lot, but for some people it is. So we try not to, but that being said, I know there are people that would be willing to give towards that and stuff.
I would really
in the
support
membership.
Councillor Sobel and Peterson with the grants and looking at how we can subsidize this at a fundraising level. And I commend you for all the work you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Cox, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted, thank you, Your Worship. Again, I just want to add something to your motion regarding the report. I'd like to see a little bit more financial in the report, if you,
Sure, yeah,
if you
from
could.
the club's financials? Yeah.
As far as, what you've spent previously, because
Yeah.
again, I wasn't here before, but I
Sure.
do know that Town of Strathmore has given before. I kind of,
Yeah, that was for an event for the tournament.
it was specific to an
the
event.
event.
Okay,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
okay, on a
But
go
yes,
forward.
we have spent money on course upgrades, new pin locations, new,
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
if
and
when you
looking
do
at
the
that.
report, if you wouldn't mind including financial details, that would be really helpful.
Yep.
Thank you.
If I could just add something too, are you thinking of the green space at Archie Kleiber Trail and Center Street? Is that one of the ones you're thinking of? It's that green space with the creek that goes through it from
Yes.
Kinsman?
Yeah, and I don't know who owns that, if that is town or not.
I think
that
that's
could
something we
be-
can definitely do if you get in touch with administration, because I think it is reserve land. It's been set aside for possible stormwater management, but there is a chance that might be able to be a good fit, but talking with management would be good. The other thing I would suggest is talking to Jill McDonald, if you haven't already. She's at Golden Hills School Division, and she and the students from Holy Cross Collegiate and Strathmore High and the Say Group are the ones who really brought the course to life. So that would be a great resource person. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would move that administration work with Mr. Bylaw and Strathmore Disc Golf to examine possibilities for placement for a pitch and putt, to examine grant funding and support thereof, and offer opportunity for recreational partnership into the future regarding Strathmore Disc Golf.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Matt, for coming forward and your interest in wanting to have the sport progress and move forward and grow. So thank you very much, and you can get contact information on the town website, and hopefully you and administration can start to move forward with parks and come up with a good report.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Which brings us to the confirmation of minutes, 5.1 minutes of the January 10th, 2018 regular council meeting.
So move, Your Worship.
We have a motion from Councillor Peterson to accept those minutes. All in favor? The motion is carried. And 5.2, the minutes of the January 10th, 2018 public hearing.
I so move.
Councillor Bauer has made that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And there is one tabled item from last week, I believe, from the Committee of the Whole, and it is 6.1, the taxi bylaw. And Tracy Simpson is going to speak to. Thank you and welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just dropped all my mail. So my apologies, our Protective Services Manager was unable to attend this evening, and so I am speaking on his behalf. Following the January 10th meeting and a presentation from a local taxi company, council requested more information from administration to be brought back regarding the requirement to hold first aid by our local taxi drivers. So we want to address a couple concerns that were brought up and some requests to move forward. Excuse me. The first concern that was brought forward was around liability. In talking to council previously at the committee of the whole meeting last week, we discussed the legislation around the Emergency Medical Aid Act of Alberta, which was previously known as the Good Samaritans Act. And this act covers all individuals in the province of Alberta, both medical professionals and others who hold first aid tickets, to be protected. And I'm just going to read the legislation. Any persons or person not mentioned in the previous clauses, i.e. physicians and nurses, voluntarily rendering emergency first aid assistance, and that assistance is rendered at the immediate scene of the accident or emergency. So that's the action in which we're speaking in context. And that person is not liable for damages, for injuries to or the death of the person alleged to have been caused by an act or omission on his or her part in rendering medical services or first aid assistance. This act has been established to protect all citizens in the province who are acting in good faith to help one another. This act has been upheld 100% of the time in court and provides great protection to anyone, not just employees, in providing first aid. There are similar acts in other provinces, and we provided council with some examples of Saskatchewan to see some of the other legislation in the country. The second thing we wanted to talk about was best practices. In doing our research a few years ago when the taxi bylaw was first reviewed and approved, as well as in the last couple of weeks, we did comparisons with other taxi, livery, and limousine bylaws for other communities in Alberta as well as other provinces. And what we found is while some do require first aid, it's definitely not common practice, and Strathmore is one of the first municipalities to recognize the importance of public safety and first aid in this position. Administration sees value in providing this best practice in the best interest of public safety, and therefore we're bringing some recommendations to acknowledge that this is new practice for our companies and to help make the transition smooth. So we're asking council to uphold the current requirements for the taxi bylaw and requirement of first aid to be held by all taxi drivers. Through our chief licensing inspector, we're recommending, or we are willing to provide all taxi drivers who are working for companies and brokers registered in the town of Strathmore an in-house standard first aid and CPR course through internal town of Strathmore departments. The cost would be subsidized based only on the cost of certification and not the labor of administering the course. It's approximately $50 per person, which will last 50 years, just 3 years. Upon completion of the course by each driver, the chief licensing inspector will be waiving their permit fee for the year. And every year that they provide that first aid, or recognition of first aid, that fee will be waived. And thirdly, we will be offering a one-time extension to allow taxi drivers and companies to meet the requirements, an extension to February 23rd, that they either must show proof of first aid or a willingness to receive first aid in the near future, based on availability of the courses. Those are our recommendations and requests for council. And if anyone have any questions.
Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. And I appreciate administration coming back with these recommendations. In regards to the first recommendation, was there any discussion in regards to how this is going to look in regards to keeping the driver's certificates valid? And is this something that would have to happen once a year, twice a year? There's obviously going to be change in employment that's kind of regular.
So through our chief licensing inspectors and the program of annual registration for taxi licenses. And Jen, please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. They will be required to provide proof of first aid. Once we have it on file, it'll be on file for the 3 years, and at the 3-year term, they'll then be required to show proof at the next time. The onus will be on them to bring new proof of certification to the chief licensing inspector.
Right, but
Yeah.
if we're going to supply, supply somebody to do the first aid courses, how often is that going to take place? If we were going to do that once every 3 years, then I'm pretty sure we're going to run into a situation where some drivers, new drivers, are without a certificate.
Sorry,
Not following me?
Councillor Sobel, I'm not
Nope.
following the question.
So, let's say we we give a course on January 1st of 2019 for all the drivers in a taxi company. And in March, one of them quits and is replaced by another one. How does that person get to drive without a certificate?
The commitment that we're recommending is that the town will honor in-house first aid courses for all taxi drivers at any time.
Okay,
It would be their responsibility to
set up a,
seek out the person that we put them in touch with to get that certification before they apply for their taxi driver license.
okay, all right. So just, I just make a comment on this. So when this was, when council asked for this to come back and with some of these possible solutions, it was certainly my hope to assist and ease the burden on the taxi companies for a part of the bylaw, which I agree is somewhat unorthodox, but also, in my opinion, is a very common sense and necessary requirement of that taxi bylaw. It was not, however, my desire to create a loss of income for the town as a result, and for that reason, I can't support number 2 in this in the recommendations, but I would certainly support 1 and 3. Thank you.
Councillor Corbeil. I think you were the next one.
Thank you, Your Worship. May I ask, what is the cost of number 2?
Yeah,
I knew you were going to ask that. I'm going to defer to Jen on that one. I don't have that in front of me. We'll get back to you.
Thanks.
Shortly.
Councillor Montgomery?
So I guess like one question would just be, so we would waive their fee once every 3 years or just every year?
That is a really great question. I think the intention would be, it would be the 1 year that they're certified, but we may have to come back on that one and clarify.
Okay. And then I guess like to speak to Councillor Sobel's concern, maybe if we, still charge them the permit fee, but maybe just knocked off whatever they had to spend on the course?
I believe the intention of waiving the fee was that they're very close in price. Thank you.
So the permit fee is $50.
Okay. Yeah, so like to me, it makes sense. So I'm happy with it.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Your Worship. So mine is playing off of Bob's. I just think that it's not quite clear. I think our intentions were to help them to get started with the first aid. So my understanding from last week was that we were going to offer them a discounted rate for initially. But if they were to hire somebody on new, what have you, that was going to be one of their recommendations to, like, we'll hire you, but you have to have first aid kind of thing. So I don't mind supporting this if it's a one-time, we're offering the course, they get their course, this gets them into it, but then it becomes part of their system. So I don't mind number 2, again, if it's only that first time.
Correct. And the way number 2 is written, thank you for the question, is successful completion of the course, each driver will have their driver permit fee waived in 2018.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Bauer?
My question is what will the penalty be, if any, if a taxi driver or company does not comply with the bylaw?
I'm going to ask Jennifer to jump in on that question.
It could range in a number of things from a fine, but it could also result in them not getting their their driver's permit, or we could revoke that permit as well.
And then secondary to that, how often are bylaw officers inspecting these vehicles?
Within the bylaw, it's required that vehicles themselves are inspected every 6 months. And then for licenses for drivers would be at the time of application or upon renewal at the end of January of each year.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that that this is a good practice, that having the legislation of having first aid is a good practice. But I also recognize that it's not a common practice. And so we have done something that is out of the ordinary. And in doing that, we have created an additional burden on the companies. And I believe that if we desire compliance, then I think this recommendation that sits before us is what is necessary. And I certainly would not vote for this. I think that over-legislating is never, ever a good idea. But if you balance legislation with the welfare of society and balance that with the good of sound business and community, then this to me seems something that is fair and just. And I support it the way it is, understanding that in number 2, that upon completion of the course in the year of receiving the first aid CPR training, that the fee would be waived. I am in favor of that. And if that's what it takes to get compliance, I think that is very necessary. One of the other concerns that I heard from the presentations that we've had in council on 2 occasions is that many of the drivers for these cabs are highly reliable people who are seniors and people that weren't particularly comfortable in classroom learning environments. And so this is also a trial in some regards for them as well. So I really appreciate the steps that you've taken to bring this into being. And I really believe that if we're going to follow through and have compliance for this, then this is absolutely what we have to do.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Cox?
So I'm going to go back. I'm fine with number 2 if it's a one-time thing, but I do think that number 1 isn't really clear. So what are we saying? Are we saying we are offering them first aid no matter when they come to us, no matter what?
For the question.
Sorry.
That's the recommendation of administration, but we are
Okay.
open to other suggestions.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. If I could just add my comments. I think one of the things that we all have to remember, and I think we are keeping this in mind, is that as councillors, we're supposed to make decisions based on what's best, what we think is best for the general interests of the population. And I think first aid from drivers is a best practice solution. But I also like the idea of how the town is trying to come up with a way to soften the burden on the taxi companies in town, and by providing this CPR, or the first aid course at cost, is a way for the taxi companies to do it and not be burdened by that. So I'm hoping that we can, if we do this, that it will ease that for our taxi companies in town and still result in safe situations with the drivers. Councillor Sobel?
Oh, this is getting complicated. I continue to have issues with number 1. I don't think it's fair or right that our staff be responsible. Thank you. That's a good word. Responsible for this 15, 18 times a year. And I don't know how many times it is. But I also realize that unless we have a change in the bylaw, probably we can't do this. And my thought is going to have these courses available on a preset date twice a year, every 6 months, and have a grace period for drivers until that course. I see Ms. Sawatsky's nodding her head, and I'm not exactly sure how this is going to run out, but that's just generally what I'm thinking of, and that's going to alleviate some of the responsibility. And I'm trying to think about the taxi drivers here. So you have a taxi driver that wants to be a taxi driver, but he can't work until he gets this course, and the course isn't for another month or so. It just doesn't seem fair. It just doesn't seem right.
Sorry, can I ask for clarification? The town normally offers like first aid courses, right? And so these people would just be going into like almost a normal first aid course class that we would be offering anyways? Or is this a special class just for these people?
That's a very good question, Councillor. It could be one or the other. We offer a handful of courses throughout the year to meet the needs of both our internal staff as well as some of the programming at our facilities. But we also have the flexibility that if we had enough people requesting it at one time, we could offer a specific course for a specific need.
Okay.
So, in theory, at the beginning of the year right now, when we know we need to license them all, we would offer them one course for them specifically. Then throughout the year, we wouldn't offer a course for one person, so they would have to fit into a schedule. You are correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess if I could ask a question of Legislative Services, if we're going to have a motion concerning the taxi bylaw and the first aid component of that, is this all laid out as clearly as it could be for us to make a motion? Like, we seem to be having some confusion as far as how we're going to provide the first aid. It's not spelled out as far as how often until Councillor Sobel mentioned the twice a year aspect.
So I think that council is good with the recommendations in front of them. The procedure we can handle on the administrative side, as far as deadlines, how many courses we offer, things like that, and grace periods. We can handle that on the procedure side, but as long as council has kind of the overarching guidelines, then we're good.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Jen. So I'll be looking for a motion then from council, I'm thinking.
Am I supposed to?
Sorry, are we able to have a representative from the taxi company speak?
Your worship, that is up to council.
Is council is amenable to that?
Your worship?
Yes.
A question on procedure. This is also a bylaw change, correct? It doesn't have to be in addition to the bylaw, it can just be a motion of council?
It can just be a motion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that clarification. Brenda, would you like to step forward to the microphone and say a few words?
See, it goes back to Alberta Transportation. It says in there, if I have a customer in my vehicle, which I do most of the time, I can't stop to help somebody. And if I have a customer waiting for a cab, I can't stop, I gotta go get that customer. I have responsibilities to get these people to work, to school. I can't be stopping, oh, the lady fell and.
So if I can just clarify, are you saying that if your drivers have to get first aid, they have to stop every time they see something? Is that what you're worried about?
You guys are saying.
I think we're just saying that in order, that to have first aid would be safer and better for the typical resident who takes a ride with your cab driver.
See, and I just got.
Like, I would hope if you didn't have first aid
I don't want it, because then I need a number for Golden Hills Division, who they're gonna contact here at the office to explain to why we quit 31st. AIM Society needs a number, the public needs a number, who they're gonna phone.
So you're
Because
saying
word
that,
is, if you're gonna pass it, January 31st, Strathmore shuttle is shut down.
there is a statement here that says that there would be an extension to February 23rd. And as far as forcing your drivers to become pseudo paramedics, I don't think we're saying that this having first aid would make them have to stop, but we're also hoping that any driver, even without first aid, if you saw someone on the side of a road or on a sidewalk who looked like he or she was in distress, that a driver would stop, or someone would stop.
So if we did stop, all we do is sit beside them, give them, if it's cold, hey, we got an extra coat blanket in our cab, here's a blanket, the ambulance is on its way. That's all we can do. That is it.
Councillor Montgomery?
So, nothing about having first aid actually compels you to use it. Like, I believe, like, there's no law that says if you have first aid that you have to use it. So it's just a requirement that in order to get the taxi
Well,
license,
we're-
you have to have first aid. There's nothing saying you have to stop and actually.
January 31st.
I guess my question is, why would you necessarily be done if
None of my drivers, I've said at 3 meetings already, do not want to take a first aid course. Canmore doesn't have, I had a customer out there, they questioned Canmore for me. It's a tourist place. Cab drivers don't have first aid. A tourist place. Like, how many people come all over and go there?
So like.
Calgary doesn't have first aid.
You're aware that like some, say an oil business would have like the requirement that their employees get first aid. That doesn't mean that those people, as they're driving down the highway, are compelled to provide first aid to people on the side of the road. It just means that in order to work for that particular company, they need to have first aid.
My drivers don't want the certificate. They don't want it at all.
You-
So I have nobody, and so we're done.
You understand
Councillor
that
Cox?
you understand that what we're ultimately saying is, we're gonna provide it for you, and it's gonna cost you nothing.
No,
No more than what it would cost you to get your permit.
my drivers don't want the certificate. I'm done. I have no drivers.
I'm actually stunned that we're in this kind of situation, because I would just feel.
The reason why we put this in, Swansky,
Ms. Swatsky?
sorry, and Bylaw Teresa, we were sitting here, the 3 of us. The reason they said they were gonna put it in is because Marty was driving in the back alleys, looking for crackheads and all this stuff and helping them. And they said then, right in here, that they were gonna put it through, and I said, no, I'm not doing it.
Well, I wasn't there to hear that, so I don't know about that situation. If I can come back just with a question to you, what would stop your drivers from taking the basic first aid course if it's basically free to your company?
I can get them all, I asked them, if I had to get a paper for you guys to sign, do you want first aid, yes or no? All of them had said no.
And why is that?
They don't want it.
But why?
That's their opinion. You're gonna have to ask them their opinion. They don't want it. They told me no.
Huh. That's really unfortunate. Like, it's unfortunate, yeah.
They don't want it. Target. She's a personal trainer there. She's our first aid course teacher.
Yeah.
She talked to her insurance company, and they said, no, don't get it. I've talked to a few other businesses in town here, the gyms. They say, no, don't get it.
So I have first aid that, and I've never been forced to use it against my will.
Their insurance companies are saying don't get it. So if the restaurants don't have to have it, if the hospital can't help me out in the parking lot, half the teachers
I think what.
don't have to, they deal with kids.
Yeah.
They don't have, all of them don't have to have it. Why does a cab driver have to have it? We're here to transport people.
Why shouldn't a cab driver have one?
We're just here to transport people. If they need medical attention, they should be phoning an ambulance, not a cab.
Absolutely, I agree.
I think it has to do with the fact that you're dealing with somebody on like usually a one-on-one or kind of in a confined area where if something goes wrong with that person, you need to be able to recognize it and then kind of deal with it appropriately. And I think that's probably the basis for it. We're not expecting anybody to be going and looking for or picking people up that need medical attention. or stopping to save people. It's entirely to do with just the people within your vehicle that you're transporting and making sure that they
Well, I'd be on the
can
phone
get there
up to
safe.
911, meet me at the front of the hospital, because I need an ambulance there to get them out of my vehicle.
Yeah. Well, and what's really kind of like, I guess, unfortunate right now is that the council and the town is trying to work with you and to kind of give you consideration, and it's.
Councillor Cox.
Sorry, you referred to restaurants, you referred to schools. They do have people that have first aid. They have people that have first aid in their schools. They have to.
Did you have first aid when
It's not an individual. Not everyone has to have it. The reason that what we're recommending is you work alone. You understand that, right? In a restaurant, in a fitness center, in a school, they're not working alone.
Yes. Target has a key that I can go there at 4 in the morning and get into that gym and work out. Is there anybody there? No.
Now that's different. That's somebody working out at their own risk. But if there was an employee there, and only one employee, I would be hard pressed to say they didn't have first aid. I don't need to. I think what we're trying to say is this is best practice for everyone.
We're done.
And we have done everything we can to make sure that you're being not financially burdened and that your people are being improved. This will improve their
They don't want.
everything.
We're done I guess we're done. So I gotta tell Golden Key. and
Very
everybody
sad.
to- Yeah, it is.
Councillor Bauer.
I am beyond disappointed in hearing you speak today. Again, we are meeting for the third time. We are going over best practices, what we believe to be a good opportunity for your drivers to raise the standards because you are transporting vulnerable populations. You've already said you need to contact Golden Hills. That means that you're dealing with students, young students, and I know that you're dealing with special needs students as well. I know that you pick up older people, people that are over the age of your drivers. For you to say that people do not need first aid, occupational health and safety has gone through every profession in the province and has mandated what the minimum requirements are.
Not for taxis.
And I believe that this is a step forward for our town in supporting this bylaw and saying that, yes, we do support that you should have first aid, not only to protect yourself, but to protect our population of residents here. So I am in support of this bylaw.
I think one of the things, if I could add to Councillor Bauer, one of the things that concerns me is it feels to me, as far as the taxi drivers and the company is concerned, is that the tail is wagging the dog. And what concerns me is, why are the drivers being able to hold you hostage by saying that they're not going to get first aid when it's a wash? Nobody has to pay anything.
We're like family. My drivers and that, like the older ones, we're like family.
I understand the closeness, but I don't understand why the drivers would refuse first aid course when it's basically free to your company.
They don't want it.
But I don't understand, there's no explanation for why they would. But there is, you can say that you're a family and there's closeness, but you haven't given me a real concrete reason why one of your drivers would not take the first aid course.
They don't want it.
That's not a reason.
Because we don't have to help them. So why have it? Why have it? If we don't have to help it, why do we have to say, yes, we have first aid? Why?
Councillor Sobel.
My very last comment on this, a lot of people take first aid just for their family, just for their household, in case one of their children or their grandchildren suffers an injury and they know what to do. Maybe your driver should think about that. There's a bigger picture here. They've got to stop looking at themselves, start looking at other people. It's not enough of that in this world these days. We got to start helping each other.
With our company, we look after our seniors, we look after our public.
Well, not very well apparently,
Oh, we
because you
do.
don't care about first aid, and you already said it.
You know what?
If you're
If
driving,
somebody comes up to my
we can't both
vehicle-
talk. If somebody is, you already said, if you're driving by and a woman's laying on the ground, he ain't stopping. That is a very, very sad comment. And if that's the attitude in them, maybe it's good you leave, because you're not helping our community. But we have given you an opportunity here, Brenda, to work with us and to improve your service. And it's very sad that you don't want to take advantage of it.
If I have a customer in my vehicle, I cannot stop.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. It's an Alberta transportation law. I'll get a write-up on it.
I don't agree with you.
Because I have a driver right now
We'll
who's
agree to
taking
disagree.
that
Remove the motion.
course.
You can.
We'll agree to disagree.
Council Montgomery?
I'll say one last thing as well. I'm a business owner, so I can definitely appreciate, what it feels like to have, government kind of piling on regulations. And the fact that, this first aid requirement specifically targets your industry, I think that it's a fair compromise that the town is essentially waiving the fee so that you're able to get this certification without actually having to pay any money. Like I said, I know it's a burden, and I think it's a fair compromise that you don't actually have to pay for it.
See, I was gonna pay for it as a company. The drivers weren't gonna pay for it. I was gonna pay for it as a company, but none of them wanted to.
Well, and I guess I would also, ask you to just give it some thought and not make any kind of rash decisions, and maybe talk to your drivers. And we're not trying to get you to quit. That's why we're
That's what
actually,
you're doing.
no, that's why we're actually working with you right
You're not
now.
working with me.
We have taken what
As
could have been,
an owner, we have
but
no
Brenda,
rights.
we have taken what could have been a $180 fee for each driver and made it so that it's basically free, because we're waiving the driver permit fee, and we're coming up with the cost of $50. So there's no cost for the driver to do the first aid course, and we're waiving the $50 driver permit fee, so it's a wash. So really, all that's stopping this from happening is that you're saying your drivers will not take the course, and there's been no reason other than they don't want to take the course.
Okay, I'm gonna make a thing up saying, will you take the course if the town pays for it? They put no and they sign it, then I'll bring it in.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion based on the recommendations with the following add-ons. If a new driver requires first aid, there will be a grace period to allow the driver to certify with first aid. As well, upon successful completion of a course, each driver will therefore have their driver's permit fee, Bylaw 13-21, Schedule 1, waived in 2018. Also, to provide all taxi drivers working for companies and brokers registered in the town of Strathmore and in-house first aid CPR training course at the cost of $50 per person and certification which lasts 3 years. Number 5, upon successful completion of the course, I've already said that one. And the final portion of this decision will be a one-time extension for the requirements of the taxi bylaw to be extended to February 23rd, 2018, where all drivers must show proof of standard first aid to comply, or a scheduled date for the completion of this course.
Okay, Councillor Peterson, did you want to speak to that motion?
To the motion, thank you, Your Worship. So I hear loud and clear what you're saying, and you are right. Not all teachers have to have first aid. There are standards set out that say some of them do, but that doesn't mean that some teachers don't work in isolation. That's absolutely correct. But it's not a best practice that teachers don't have it. Having said that, there are other agencies in this town that have supervision of the same population that you have, librarians, that work under their own boards, but that work in, and they are not required to either. So we recognize that. Having said that, I think that this is a best practice. And as I said before, I could not have voted for this if I didn't know that your company could have an actual benefit, if they so choose, a benefit in the area of about $230 per person. And I really believe, I know in fact, that your company, that you and your drivers provide a critical service to this community.
We do.
You absolutely do. And I am just hoping that your drivers will understand that if they access what Ms. Simpson has laid out today, that every effort will be made to make this as well, not easy, but as succinct and as comfortable and as fitted to their needs as absolutely possible. And they'll have every opportunity. I can promise you that. And I really, really hope that for the sake of our community, that we can continue to work together, because I really value what you've offered, and I really hope it can continue. And I hope that your drivers will, if they have concerns about what they're going to be required to do, that they come and talk to Ms. Simpson, that they get a feeling that maybe if they have discomfort around what they're being asked to do, that they understand that it didn't come from you, that it's coming from us, and that we have every desire to make things as comfortable and as concise for them in order to meet this new standard that we're asking you for, that we'll make every effort possible to do this.
Can I answer another question that was asked tonight? How often does the bylaw check our vehicles? When we purchase a new one, that is it.
Well, I believe
Those fines?
the new bylaw will allow for the officer in charge of the taxis to make mechanical, or to check on whether these mechanical checks have been done twice a year. I believe that this bylaw gives that officer the power to make sure that the vehicles are being checked mechanically. That's the new bylaw that's been
They're
in.
supposed to check it every time. The only time they check the vehicles to see if they're clean and whatever is when I gotta come here to put a stick number 1, 2 on them, B or whatever on them. That's it.
Okay,
The rest of the year, I don't see them.
we have a motion on the floor, and the only thing I want to add is that I've been on the youth club board for 7 years, and just to be a board member, I had to pay a fee to have a criminal background check as well as a social service check. But that's just to be on a board where I meet with other adults. This is to transport people who are residents of the town who will be in a much safer situation if drivers have their first aid. That's the only thing I want to say. We have a motion on the floor. Everybody has heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? And the motion is carried unanimously. And we thank you. We are sorry that you feel the way you do, and we are very hopeful that if you and your drivers can meet with Tracy Simpson, this can become an effortless, or at least a close to effortless process. And as we've said, we've really tried to make sure that the cost is, that it's cost neutral and it won't be a financial burden to your company. We're hopeful that your drivers will see that this is an important thing to have to make your company a stronger company.
I'll just get our accounts to phone you guys on
You're going to get who?
Golden Hills, Ames and all that, and to phone you guys.
Okay, thank you.
You're gonna transport them now.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 7, items from administration. 7.1, council committee appointment for the Strathmore Library, page 17.
Your worship.
Jen.
Thank you. The Strathmore Library Board has requested from council to appoint a new member to the library board. Administration is recommending that council appoint Ms. Tracy Cornett to the library board for a 1-year term ending October 31st.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky. You've all heard the report, or the report summary concerning the library appointment. Councillor Cox? I saw a red flash over there. Councillor Sobel?
Your worship, I'll move that council appoint Ms. Tracy Cornett to the library board for a 1-year term ending October 31st, 2018.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Item 7.2, the municipal right-of-way work and excavation permit and policy, page 19 of your package. Chuck Proctor, Mr. Proctor, would you step forward and present for us?
Good evening, everybody. Your worship, members of council, I do have a supplementary thing, if I may pass out, just something I didn't quite get into the agenda on time last week. All this is the checklist that we're proposing to go along with this permit application. Thanks. Sorry for not having this in your agenda package.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you. This is just the permit application checklist. Proposed. So I do have a brief presentation tonight, 15 slides, introduction, examples, policy, and then Q&A. So we've identified a policy gap here at the town, and we've come to council. It has to do with municipal right-of-ways. This is just a fancy way of saying sidewalks, curbs, roads, parks, stuff that we own. Currently, we do not have a process or a permit in place for work occurring in these lands. And we've been responding to work on a case-by-case basis, which is not preferred. So this, I want to say straight up that this policy is not in response to any of our contractors, agents, utilities, or anybody treating us poorly. Everybody's been doing a great job. We thank them for the hard work in our community. But the town is growing. Infrastructure is at risk. Public funds are at risk because we don't have enough information or proof of insurance on these applications. And a formal process is preferred. Again, it's part of Mr. Roycroft's department review and stuff that we've been kind of noticing in our department. We need these documented policies. We need these formal processes. We want to be a professional organization, so we brought this forward today. We've also want to protect our public funds, and the new policy kind of establishes a transparent process, something that will treat everybody the same. So the best way to describe this policy is through examples first. So developers, builders, companies, and agencies are sometimes required to dig into our stuff. That isn't Strathmore, I think that's somewhere in Europe, but they do this to either upgrade services, repair services, or install new services. That's generally what they're doing. They can result in kind of large earthwork operations. They can be quite big, and roadways can be closed because of these things. So example one, Center Street in 2017, municipal water and sanitary services needed to be upgraded. It was a single detached dwelling that was rezoned for medium density. There was 2 sixplexes proposed on this lot, and the services needed to be upgraded. The road needed to be closed, neighbors needed to be notified, emergency services needed to be notified. There are traffic detours in place, and a newspaper ad went to the paper. And a second example of a municipal right-of-way work that occurred in 2017 was Bell installed some fiber optic cable on 3rd Avenue. Again, this is just a case-by-case kind of a handshake operation. A portion of the road was closed. As you can see there, there's signage and detours in place. And they were digging next to large infrastructure, some of which was aged. So you can see that these are projects that have been occurring in the town. They can be quite big. I think we need something in place to kind of outline this process, how we want to treat these folks moving forward, rather than just kind of emails and a handshake. So both went well. I think both went without issues, but we are at risk currently without a policy in place for this work occurring. So into the policy. Tonight we're recommending a new policy, a permit and a fee. And also a deposit. We looked at Calgary, Banff, Grand Prairie, and our biggest example was St. John's on the East Coast. It's not a perfect policy. I think I'll come back next year and update council, if that's okay. I anticipate that we're going to get about 5 in 2018. 5 of these permits come through the door. Okay, so our process outlines the steps for an application. This is what we require. We require a $200 application. It covers the team review, our ad in the paper. We require a $2,000 deposit, which can be used to correct deficiencies. 50% of this deposit can be refunded right away if it's satisfactory and an inspection has occurred. And then the rest is refunded after 1 year project complete. So we go back and make sure that the pavement that they've replaced is settled correctly, that the grade is the same, that it's still safe 1 year after. Also, a part of this process is a proof of insurance, $2 million per liability. We need proof of that up front. No questions asked kind of thing.
Chuck, can we ask a question as we go through?
Yes, for sure.
I just wanted to ask while this is on the screen, are any of these in place at all now? Like, they don't have to pay any kind of a deposit as far as the quality of the road afterwards?
Your worship, that is correct.
Okay.
There's nothing in place. The requirements can vary from staff to staff. It's something that we want to correct. There's no outline, there's no process currently.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you for the question. Excellent question. Okay, so along with insurance, we require engineering drawings, traffic accommodation plans, and a communication plan. Sometimes when you close the road down, folks have to let the neighbors know, let them know that the road is going to be closed down. So we need that information up front. And we think that in part of asking for this information, the town gets what we want, we get the information, and the applicant is more prepared because they prepared these plans, that they kind of have a plan moving forward, and they can deliver a better kind of process that way too. So it's kind of a win-win in that look. So both of us, again, are more prepared, and more public notice is given as well. Okay, so that was the application process, and this is kind of what our review process looks like. So when we get a permit application this is kind of what the sample process might look like, and this is for a larger project, say a 3 Center Street one where the sanitary and sewer needed to be upgraded. So we'd accept a complete application on the checklist there. We need to have all those check boxes complete. The team would review, so my infrastructure development team would review. The engineering is checked to make sure that it's to town standard. We have the GIS department creating a map, which gets posted in the paper, Strathmore Times. We have our folks create a map so that there's some consistency with the drawings and accuracy with the drawings as well. If the road is closed, EMS, emergency services, are notified 48 hours in advance. EPCOR is notified so they can be on site if there's anything happening near a water line. We have an EPCOR representative stop by. And schools are notified because when a road is closed, we have to notify for bus routes. Okay, so after work is complete, we do an operation kind of safety inspection right away. And we can use the deposit money to correct any deficiencies if there are any. We're holding that $2,000. The applicant can request another inspection after that safety inspection has occurred and get $1,000 of that deposit back immediately if we're happy. And then after 1 year of the project being complete, another inspection occurs and the remainder of that deposit is refunded. So in kind of the best case scenario, the applicant is only out $200. They get that full refund of the $2,000, and that $200 is just to cover our costs for the newspaper ad and the time that it takes the team to review. And then we have that $2,000, so they have some skin in the game as well. They can't just walk away and we never hear from them again. They'll be back in a year to touch base with us. So again, just a quick summary before we move on to Q&A. Currently, we don't have a formal process in place. It's something that we've noticed as a policy gap, and we want to correct this. We've been operating on a case-by-case basis. It's important that I bring this to the council before spring, before we start getting these requests. We're kind of going through a department review recently. We want to become a professional organization and department, and having a formal policy in place is required. The new policy outlines the process that applicants will need to go through. It's very clear. We'll treat everybody the same. Applicants will have more skin in the game with that deposit, with that information that they provide with us. The town will have more information, proof of insurance, contact information, all that stuff. And infrastructure and public funds will be better protected, I believe, with this policy and application. We'll continue to monitor this. I think that it's safe to say that it's a strong policy, but it's probably not perfect. We can come back in a year's time and report any downsides to the policy, any updates that we want to do. I have 2 sample questions there. I won't go over them, but just I thought of the 2 biggest kind of questions that I was worried about tonight and wrote those down. So I'll open up to the floor. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Chuck. Councillor Montgomery, I think, was.
Councillor
Sobel.
first.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
And certainly, I think this is way past due. I'm glad that this is coming forward, and certainly an important issue. A couple questions.
Sure.
I'm just reading the answer to one of the questions.
Oh.
The $2,000, I guess, I'll start with that one because it's staring right at me in the front here. But the $2,000, like $1,000 after a year, that's not going to go very far if in regards to repairs or even the $2,000 is really nothing. And I can appreciate that, if I can read fast enough here, is I mean, you've got to have a situation where it's not too inconvenient for the company as well. Any comments on that? I haven't finished reading your answer.
No problem. I think it's a fantastic question. You're right. $2,000 is pretty small in the scale of these projects. They can be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We certainly don't want to scare anybody away from doing that. I think that's part of the reason, and it's just also in line with what St. John's is doing and Calgary and Grand Prairie kind of thing. It's all within that same line. Of course, administration is open to a new fee if council suggests.
Well, the fact that you're looking for general liability for $2 million, I guess. So I guess if it may be perfect the way it is, and I'll let it sit there, but the question that I did have on the 2 million was that something that you feel would be a difficult item to provide for some companies? I'm assuming that they would have that anyway, most of them, but I just wanted to double check on that.
I'm probably not as strong as I should be with that answer. It just seemed to be kind of the general thing, again, that City of Calgary and that St. John's would require Council Montgomery's
Everybody's nodding their head in the back.
2 million is like a fairly standard
Okay.
rate for.
Thanks, Jason. And a question I had in regards to notifying the schools, et cetera, EPCOR, should the police not be notified as well if the road is closed?
Oh, of course, Councillor Sobel, yeah, emergency services includes fire, police, everybody, they get minimum 48 hours business time notification of any road closure in town.
And lastly, are we dealing only with town-owned property?
Your worship, yes, Councillor Sobel, I believe so, municipal right-of-ways, roads, sidewalks, parks, gutters.
We are hiring this company to do some work? No.
No.
See, I'm missing something here.
No problem. It would be like a Bell or a TELUS or a Shaw coming in, or either a private developer installing new services, that kind of thing. It's not us. It's kind of.
But we do also do that, don't we?
We also do that, correct? Like we did a Second Avenue project as
Right.
well. Like we wouldn't require a permit for that because it's us doing the work. We have the liability. And we'd have the liability underneath our contractors as well.
But we would be following the same procedures.
We'd be following the same procedure,
That's
of
what I
course.
wanted to
Yeah, for sure. We just needed some consistency with the way that we've been treating the private entities. Shaw, TELUS, Bell, those folks. Yeah.
Great, thank
That's
you.
an excellent question.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Montgomery?
And so this also deals with the contractor who would be opening the road up to connect new services for a house, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I have a couple questions. One would be, kind of in line with what Councillor Sobel was saying, like the $2,000, and as much as I don't want to start throwing around bigger numbers than that, and also I guess to do with the insurance. So general liability covers damage done to other property, but it doesn't actually cover the work that the company did. So if a company say digs up the road, hooks up a pipe and then fills it back in, and say something goes wrong and the pipe breaks or whatever, it would cover the damage done to the surrounding area, but it wouldn't actually cover any work that the company did. So digging the road up, it wouldn't cover replacing that. It wouldn't cover maybe even hooking the pipe up or something like that. So should we be looking at having more specific insurance that would actually cover almost like a course of construction type insurance that would specifically cover damage, work done by the company?
Through the chair to Councillor Montgomery, it's an excellent suggestion. If you want administration to look more into insurance, I'd be happy to come back with that or add that to this policy. Do you folks have anything to add?
Thank you, Worship. I'll just sort of provide a little bit more detail there. In the case of larger projects where they're covered under a subdivision servicing agreement, there would be a performance bond in place to cover a lot of that. With regards to the insurance and even the deposit on this one, staff are sort of being very conscious that when we're introducing new policies like this, where we're starting to charge fees and require a process where we've never done before, that we're approaching this as sort of a step-by-step process, and maybe being sort of soft pedaling, putting in new fees like this. So as Chuck says, this will be reviewed after a year, and probably another couple of years after that, and at that point I suspect staff will be coming to council looking for probably more insurance and higher fees. This is a case there where we want to give a lot of the contractors who aren't used to dealing with this time to adapt to sort of the new regime and just be conscious of that.
Okay. I can certainly understand that, and I guess it would be probably beneficial if we did at least look into the insurance side just to make sure that we will be covered in the event that their other insurance won't cover it. And then I had two other questions, if you will. One is, so does the town provide the engineering drawings to the company, or where would they get those for the existing infrastructure?
Oh, Your Worship, through Council Montgomery, yes, we do have that stuff on file. Most
Okay.
likely we have as-built and stuff. Yep.
Now, I guess, is the town liable if the drawings of current infrastructure are not accurate? Or who is liable if current infrastructure is not as it is kind of represent, like, so let's say, they dig up the road to hook up to the sewer and like, the pipe is, completely falling apart. Who's responsible for that extra cost?
It's a very good question.
It's a two-part question, Mr. Montgomery. The accuracy of our drawings, we always provide that with a caveat, because we have information that we get at record drawings, or we just did it from construction drawings. We don't, some of that base information we give them. I think the engineering drawings, so there's some discrepancies on the actual drawings. On the actual infrastructure, if the infrastructure that they're tying into is falling apart, that would go into we'd be responsible for obviously repairing our own infrastructure. Like, so if they tie in and they're doing standard practice and it broke, obviously if they did everything properly, then that'd be ours. But generally, that's not an issue to pull in a tap or put a manhole in. We can get those things done. The engineering drawings at this stage, depending on the scope of the work, if it's number 3 Center Street, they did have an engineer. He just kind of showed a manhole, and he has it for that. If it's a simple house, that they're just dropping in a service, it's just showing a line where that actually is, so we can add that to our records. We're looking to improve our base information when we get this stuff in, so we know they put a 6-inch line in to service a new 6-plex, and before it was a 2-inch line and it was over here, and now they put a 6-inch here. If we don't get that information on our drawings, we end up thinking it's still a 2-inch servicing that, and then when it breaks, we go look over here, and it takes us 2 days for our public works to figure out, or EPCOR to figure out where it's at. So it's kind of will help us build our information as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. So, are there any more questions for Chuck? Then I'll be looking for a motion. Councillor Cox?
I so move that council adopt the municipal right-of-way work and excavation policy number 6104.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. You've all heard the motion. Speaking to the motion, Councillor Peterson?
Just a question, the $200 fee would go into what, general revenue, I'm assuming?
I believe so, yeah.
And just a clarification on the point regarding the caveat on our own drawings. So I'm then to understand that we are not liable?
Your Worship, with the caveat there, the town is looking to, I suppose, say that we're not liable. We'll put it that way.
Very well said.
At the end of the day, if something goes wrong and it ends up going into legal situation, of course, it goes through that process, but.
Can I use a contextual example? So we had one just recently where and it wasn't on town property, I just want to be sure of that, but Harvest Church was putting in their sprinkler system, and they had information that had been provided to the town, provided to them, and they had 3 different maps and dug in the wrong place. And so in a case like that, if that were on town property, our caveat might not work sufficiently.
Your Worship, with regards to that, certainly we would encourage folks, require folks, and as part of any development permit, to go through the Alberta one-call process as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's part of any development permit condition,
Yeah.
that you do that, and we will not issue the permit until
Of course.
that's done.
Yeah, they did go through, they just had 3 maps that were all wrong, but, that the town had. I just, so then, following up on Mr. Rowe's comments, the companies that are insured and moving forward on this municipal right-of-way are then responsible to report back to the town through this policy on exactly what they did in that work, and that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. So there's a motion on the floor. All in favor? The motion is passed. And that brings us to item 8, committee reports. Reports, item 8.1, reports from councillors from committees on which they sit. Are there any council reports? Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I have a quick report from the Handy Bus Committee. One is that the Handy Bus Committee is looking to set up a meeting between the various other municipalities in this area to kind of discuss the future of the Handy Bus. And then the Handy Bus is waiting for 2 more volunteers to join the board, after which there will be subcommittees formed to help form a strategy for the medium-term future. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. We all have this little report in front of us, the WDEMSA report from the meeting January 15, 2018. The call volume for 2017 is 9.89% higher than the 2016 call volume at 3,880 calls. This is by far the highest call volume ever experienced by WDEMSA. The transfer of reporting, financial, and bookkeeping from County of Wheatland to WDEMSA has been finalized. In February of 2017, dispatch was moved from the City of Calgary to AHS South Calgary Dispatch. This service is not deemed satisfactory, and ongoing issues with dispatch to our area continued to be an issue. There's a protocol agreement for the dispatch to contact local dispatch, so first responders, especially those in the more remote areas, might be alerted. This is not being followed explicitly, and WDEMSA and the Village of Rockyford have contacted AHS to ask for a report and follow-up. In a December 2017 celebration, 12 WDEMSA staff received Alberta Emergency Service Medals to mark their dedication to their communities. All WDEMSA staff are now trained on the provincially mandated version 3 protocol. WDEMSA remains in sound financial position. The organization is functioning at a very high level, and staff turnover is virtually non-existent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair, just a question to Councillor Montgomery in regards to the Handy Bus wishing to meet with municipalities. Do we have any kind of a timeline on that?
Not at this, it's supposed to happen kind of in the near future. I had said that it would probably be worthwhile for the councils, like if the Wheatland Council and the Town Council to get together, and then to have the Handy Bus meeting with the other municipalities following that meeting. And I have spoken to James about setting up the meeting between the councils.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery and Councillor Sobel. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick note from the Wheatland Lodge, from Wheatland Housing Management Body. We may have to change our date. It may not be in March, but I'll get back to you on that for hosting, for Councillor Sobel to lead the hosting of another bingo. And further to that, the Wheatland Housing Authority, Management Body rather, is partnering right now, meeting with the Wheatland Hospice Society, looking at some very interesting possibilities, and look forward to hearing more updates from them. I think that that is a natural fit, and really proud of how they're working together. And the Hospice Society has set up an intergovernmental affairs committee, and this is a really powerful committee that deserves lots of time and respect. In terms of the Strathmore Overnight Shelter, attended a meeting for them. They had a very successful fundraiser on Saturday night, and well attended and very, very successful. They received a $5,000 donation from the United Steelworkers, and they are looking forward to running their Coldest Night of the Year event to raise more money. They had applied for the Alberta Rural Development Network grant and did not receive it, but in consideration for their very, very good work, they got a call from the manager of saying that the very little money that was available, they were right on the cusp, and that they are hopeful that the government is going to release more money for the network, and that that the Strathmore Overnight Shelter will definitely be in strong contention and consideration. So it's very, very good news as well. The shelter is, the potential shelter is looking at opening very soon and running initially with trained volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson, and thanks, councillors, for all your attendance at the recent events that have come up, especially Councillor Sobel and Bauer. Councillor Sobel spoke to the Masons at their Robbie Burns night, and Councillor Bauer was at the Strathmore Overnight Shelter fundraiser this Saturday. So thank you, and and thank you, Councillor Peterson, for being there as well. I just wanted to acknowledge her for speaking for us. I'm looking for a motion to accept the reports as information.
So move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is passed. Item 9, items directly related to council. I don't think we have anything, do we, Jen? No. Item 10, bylaws. 10.1 on page 45, bylaw number 18-01, supplementary assessment bylaw. Thanks, Mel, for coming forward. You'll be speaking to this. Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 1801 is considered a housekeeping bylaw that is passed annually. It provides for the town assessors to perform supplementary assessments on newly occupied or completed construction during the current 2018 year. In 2017, the town received $31,173 in supplementary taxes, and in the prior year, 2016, it was $50,249. The taxation forms part of our annual revenue, and it makes it equitable for all property owners.
Thank you, Mel. Questions for Mel? Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. I should probably know this as a former ARB board member, but this is just to, because like they're assessed on, say July 1st or something like that, and so this is just to basically prorate the taxes for the year?
That's right. If a business or if a building is completed during the year, it's a prorated amount for the balance of the year from the time of occupancy or completion.
Okay, thanks, Mel.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson?
I was just going to.
Oh, thank you. Do you want to start that off then?
Your Worship, I would move that council give first reading to bylaw 18-01.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. Councillor Bauer?
I move that council give second reading to bylaw 18-01.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. All in favor? And now that we've had second reading, is there any discussion on that? Nope. We already voted, sorry. Thank you. Looking for the next one. Councillor Montgomery?
I will move that council give unanimous consent for third and final reading to bylaw 18-01.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. Councillor Cox?
I give a motion that we give third reading for a decision on the bylaw. Third reading.
Is there any discussion? You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, councillors. Item 10.2, bylaw number 18-03, fees bylaw, amendment bylaw on page 51. Chuck, you're back with us.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, for listening to my presentation earlier. In order to add those new fees of a $200 application fee and a $2,000 deposit, we need to amend Schedule B in the fees bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Councillor Sobel?
Your Worship, I would move that council give first reading to bylaw 18-03.
Thank you,
Do I have to say
Councillor
frist?
Sobel. You don't have to say frist. Thanks. You've all heard
reading,
the
Your
motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I would move that council give second reading to bylaw 18-03.
You've all heard the motion. Is there any discussion on that?
I already voted.
Councillor Montgomery?
No, I already voted.
Oh,
Sorry.
no discussion. All in favor? Okay. Councillor Montgomery?
I'll move that council give third reading to bylaw 18-03.
Do you need unanimous consent, Jen?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Okay, well-
you'll amend that motion then to?
Yes, I will.
Ask for unanimous?
Yeah, I'll ask council for a unanimous vote to move to for the third reading.
You've heard that motion? So we're looking at a motion to give third reading, third and final reading. Jen?
No, we're not.
Your worship, you need unanimous consent for a third
Right.
and final
Okay,
reading.
that's what we're doing right now. You've all heard that motion, which we're all confused by, but I think we have it now. All in favor? Okay. Councillor Cox?
I move that we give third reading to 18.03.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried, which concludes 10, 11, urgent business. I don't believe we have anything. 12, questions between councillors and council statements. And that brings us to item 13, 13.1, administrative inquiries. Responses to them. Jen? Oh, Mark is coming forward. Thanks. Welcome, Mark, again.
Thank you, Your Worship.
That'll
Your Honor. Gotta think about that one. Last committee of the whole, Councillor Cox asked a question regarding skating on Strathmore Lakes Estates. I've had Public Works or our operations groups do an investigation along with our engineering. We've tested the ice thickness, and there's quite a thick ice there. However, the design of that facility, that stormwater facility, does not have a control system. As such, it is a pipe that comes straight out and it constantly drains. So we have no way of controlling the outflow or the inflow. Unlike Strathmore Lakes, where the inflow goes through a weir and it's buried and it has a control structure, that's controlled, and so we have what water comes in goes out. So we have constant water underneath the ice. On Strathmore Lakes, depending on melt cycles, that water could drop and we could get air pockets throughout, and it's a large lake, so we can get variance points. So based on that, it's our administration's opinion that skating should not occur on that lake due to safety, and we cannot manage that risk at this point with the current structure on that facility, on the outfall, unfortunately.
Thank you. Did you have any questions or comments, Councillor Cox? I just have one for Mark. Do we need to inform or talk to the residents who may have cleared that ice surface? Are they aware of this situation?
I understand from my operations manager that they've put a dangerous ice sign on and do not skate on the ice surface right now. And we are ordering in additional signs. There is 3 signs around the lake. However, with the extension of the walkway, there is a need, when we did last time, we need to add some more signs where the public would actually access the lake.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Cox? Councillor Sobel?
So I guess what I would be looking for is there any way we can get there?
There would be a possibility with the stormwater master plan. I'll be bringing forward some upgrades that will have to be done on Strathmore Lakes. And if we do that, there is a possibility with a proper outflow structure installed where we could make sure that the water, when the water comes in, it can go out through a weir structure that's submerged. Then there's a possibility at that point. But we'll be bringing forward that master plan later this spring.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel?
Thanks, and just thank you, Your Worship, and just further to your question, I'm just wondering whether or not your department would be able to try to make contact with whoever put that ice rink in there, that there's a skating rink there, probably from a residence right in the very close vicinity. I think we should have some effort to ensure that that whoever did that is aware of the dangers, just because it's in existence at this point.
Yeah, we'll definitely make our effort.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, that was going to be my point. Whether we put it in the paper or something to educate people on why it is unsafe, I think that's really important to get it out there because it's ice. Like people would clear it if they don't know. So.
So there is quite a few there. I believe there's 3 different things for kids to skate on. I do think, though, if you're going to educate them and tell them that it's unsafe, that you do need to maybe say that we are looking for they will be able to, so that we don't get a download of, could our communications girl maybe?
I guess I haven't been, it's, council has to direct us to make those improvements to it, and at this stage, we haven't presented any information to you to make that call, so for administration to say that we will be doing that, that'd be speaking for you, so
Okay.
until such time as we bring it forward to council to make that call, then.
Now?
To direct council.
I think at this point then, are you saying basically that we'll do the communications and signage to
Yeah.
show that it's not a safe area to skate, and then at a later date, we'll discuss in council whether or not we're going to move forward with improving the drainage? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any other responses to administrative inquiries? Jen?
Your Worship, there's no more responses, but there is a new administrative inquiry from Councillor Peterson. And it reads, would administration consider the viability of our grant writer / communications department setting up a database comprised of grant applications, successful and unsuccessful, to aid in the preparation of future grant applications? It says, note, local societies, groups, and agencies would be encouraged to share their applications, redacting any information where they feel sharing might be to their detriment. The database would be available to groups whose applications would be deemed to support Strathmore and the surrounding community. Groups could access the database once they have agreed to sharing their applications. Specific financial information need not be shared. The goal would be to enhance existing applications through applying successful templates.
Thank you, Jen. Did you want to speak to the inquiry at all? Okay, thank you. So is that the last of the inquiries? Then I'm looking, we have some items in camera. I'm looking for a motion to go in camera.
So moved.
Oh,
Councillor Peterson makes the motion to go in camera. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And we are now going in camera at 8:46.